Hmm.
You're now being recorded.
Yeah.
You've been touring. How has that been for you?
Well, it's interesting. We did a European tour. I had to postpone my American tour, which was scheduled first, and it's the first tour in 6 years.
Wow.
It was wild. A lot has happened, and I wasn't quite sure how it was going to go. But on a performance level, it was great. As soon as I kind of got back out there and hit the stage with the band, we just lit up and it just felt really comfortable. And I realized, how could I have let so much time go by?
Right.
Yeah. But we had done gigs and stuff, but a tour is kind of different. But there was a lot of challenges because a lot of issues, a lot of bands from 2020, 2021, and 2022 that had to move their tours. All seems like they all moved it to the summer festival circuit in
Right.
Europe in 22. Uh, so there was unexpected things like, and I heard this from everybody. When you let a bus sit for 2 years with no love, they get all these issues, and it was so difficult to find gear, to find workers, to find buses, all the things that we take for granted when we tour, and just so many other little obstacles, closed roads and flat tires and no air conditioning
Yeah, yeah.
and crazy long drives. So, but that's all part of the territory, and it was good to kind of go through that gauntlet because now any other tour that we do here, like in the States, or it's going to be a piece of cake.
Right, right. Well,
Yeah.
to pull from your analogy, sometimes when you let a bus sit for, 2 or 3 years, it gets some rust on it as well. Did you guys feel rusty?
Yes, because there was certain when you get on stage and the lights go down and you're in the heat of the moment, everything changes. You could rehearse all you want. You can sit in your bedroom and know the songs, learn them till you're blue in the face. But the moment you hit the deck, I know at least for me, the whole story changes. So there were certain idiosyncrasies that a guitar player like myself might have when you just hit that stage. Like I'll grab the whammy bar different, I'll go for certain things, and usually your chops aren't as refined as when you're on tour for a while because that's real. And for me, it takes a couple of weeks to settle in, for my fingers to settle in, for my body to kind of like, get into the flow of a show. So some of those things, yes, they were rusty, and I didn't know what to expect, and I noticed a few things because of 6 years. And one of the things that happened in those 6 years was last year I turned 62.
Oh,
So so things change and you go with it. I discovered that I organically kind of went with it. Like I may not be running around like I used to. I saw some video clips of we just posted a little something of from 2000, and I looked like a helicopter. It's like all of these. And when I got out on stage on this tour, it's much more refined, and my attention is really so much more on the notes. So there was a change and there was a lot of rust, and it took a little time to blow that out. But surprisingly for me, everything was working great. Like after a while, I felt like was entering new dimensions even in my playing, because your mind changes. And when that changes, your expression on anything changes.
right, right. And you put an album out during the pandemic. Have you been describing it as a pandemic album? Is it something you put together entirely during lockdown?
Yeah, yeah. I put it came together during lockdown. And I guess the term pandemic record refers to certain parameters, such as
Yeah.
I was stuck in the studio alone. I was sending files out to other musicians to be worked on, and this turned out really good. Actually, it was
Yeah, it
great.
did.
I wasn't there to tell them everything to play, so a lot of the other performers that did that with me, uh, I would just say, just you hear the track, give me what you think. And of course, there's, you know, certain things you got to work within, but I got some great stuff back. And the lockdowns and the pandemic has affected people differently. There's no one way. Of course, a lot of people suffered, but some people thrived.
Yeah.
I was one of those people that just thrived crazy, because uh, of course I was in a position where my economics are set up from past work so that you get enough to feed the beast,
Right.
you know. But it was the open time and ability to focus on certain things that I had always hoped to, but never could really find the chunk of time to do it. Like the song "Candle Power," that took a long time because there was techniques in it that were pretty obtuse to me. And then something like "Knapsack," which is a piece that I played with one hand because I underwent shoulder surgery.
Right.
That was another thing that perhaps because I was in lockdown, I was able to navigate that. And then the
Right.
teeth of the Hydra, where I play this triple neck guitar with these harp strings. It's wild looking instrument, the Hydra, and I composed this song on it that requires uh, just crazy navigation. I look like a whirly bird or something, and that required 6 solid weeks of undisturbed 15-hour days, and that wouldn't have happened if the situation wasn't what it was.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I talking about that guitar, um, there's elements of Inviolate that you probably wouldn't have been able to make if you did not have that custom triple neck guitar manufactured for you. Am I correct?
Well, I wouldn't have been able to record "Teeth of the Hydra."
Right.
That's the only song I used it for. But yeah, that's an example of the instrument kind of dictating the song.
Nice.
Now, on several levels, because when I looked at the Hydra when it was completed, just the way it looked, that creates a what kind of song is going to be played on this thing. And the fact that I refused to not use every neck, every string, I wanted to incorporate the all of the potential that I could into that song on that guitar. So it was completely different than approaching any other kind of song because I had to break like 50 years of habit.
Right.
'Cause when you're playing a guitar for 50 years, you hit a note and your pick hits the string. It's one of those kinds of things you develop. But with the Hydra, all bets were off. I had to undo that conditioning so that I could navigate different things almost like with a split mind. Well, not almost. It was
With a
like
split mind, yeah. It
I
looks like
was
a weapon. That guitar looks like something from a James Cameron movie.
well, it's actually from a it was the original inspiration for the look of the guitar came from a Mad Max movie.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. How close to the final version of that Hydra guitar is it to the first prototype that Hoshino showed you? Is it close?
It's sort of close. I mean, I call the prototype the hyena.
Okay, nice.
And we did that because it makes sense to do it because you don't want to go through all the work of building the Hydra and finishing it, like the finishing, all the electron, everything, without having something to try and go, okay, let's move this neck this way a little bit. Let's bring the strings here down over here. So the prototype is a good way to feel things out before you jump into the fire. So one of the things that's very different is the 12 string neck of the Hydra originated as a 10 string neck. So it's five strings that are doubled because I thought, well, this instrument is going to be unique. Let me do something different. Instead of having 12 strings, have a 10 string neck.
Nice.
And I got the prototype and I played the 10 string and I said, this is stupid. I want 12. So that was one of the advantages and one of the differences between the prototype and the actual Hydra. And everything's changed a little bit at least from the prototype.
Nice. I don't know if you can actually answer this specifically, but what does a Steve Vai demo sound like? Like, how close to a song like Greenish Blues is what you first noodled out compared to what we hear on the album?
Probably about 80% is the same melodies and the same thing, because that Greenish Blues was something that just happened instantly and organically at a sound check, but the recording wasn't great. But
Right.
I was so moved by what was played that I decided that there's a melody there, there's an arc to the solo, and there's riffs that just came out really nice. They need a little tweaking. So I'd say 70 to 80%.
Nice. Can fans ever hear any of your demos? Do you ever put any of those stems out so that people can check them out and compare?
No. uh, I keep everything,
Right.
and the demos sometimes are just like me sitting on my bed at night with an unplugged electric guitar coming up with a riff. That's probably the other half of the songs on Inviolate stem from that. And I've got thousands of those dating back to when I was 13. Just little snippets, and it's a great thing to do because sometimes it's not uncommon to feel inspired and then have dry periods.
Right.
So I notice that when I capture something that feels like it's got a little energy in it, like the melody to Zeus in Chains, or a Little Pretty, that the whole Little Pretty thing, or I mean, most of the stuff. It starts out as just tiny little couple of bars sometimes,
Right.
but it's got the DNA of the entire piece in it. Like you can hear it and go, I know exactly where this is going to go. But then I put it on the shelf and it has to wait its turn.
Do you think that you're always going to be an artist that seeks to make an album? And by this, I'm talking about putting together an entity of songs and calling it an album, as compared to maybe coming up with two or three songs and just putting them out one song at a time and foregoing the whole album process.
Well, that's a good question, and I've thought about it a lot. I think ultimately, part of what I do has to revolve around conventional commerce.
Right.
Like you put out an album because then it's a group of songs and it's new and it's all there, and you can make a particular statement by the dynamic of the whole record, the instrumentation you use, who you're working with. All these things can create a whole package, which is nice. But I do like the idea of, hey, I just recorded a new song. Here you go. Like one song at a time, even, or two songs at a time. It's just a little. It's a little more difficult in the way of promoting, and touring
Right.
and things like this. There's a protocol that works pretty well, and it's like, here's a record. Now I'm going to go tour and play it. I think eventually, for people like myself, I might do away with that, and just do a song, put it out, and then when I want to go on tour, I go. It's hard to say.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you can amass those songs and put them out as an album. I don't think it really matters. People will still buy product.
Well, they're going to listen to it one way or another if they're interested. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the way that we create music, record it, distribute it, and even listen to it has changed dramatically. Just since yesterday.
Yeah.
Just a couple of decades ago, and it's continuing to evolve. And this, I think, is great.
Yeah.
I try to embrace that evolution to serve me, and it does. So where it goes, I'm not sure. Of course, obviously, but I'm going to take the best of wherever it goes and use it to my advantage, as I
As you should.
suggest anybody would.
As you should.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned that you you put together Inviolate, isolated and separate. Did you ever get an opportunity to be in a room with Brian and Philip and Heinrich and put some of your pieces together while you were recording the album?
Well, what I usually do is I create a blueprint, which is sort of like a demo that then gets built upon to be the final. That was for Inviolate because, I didn't really sit with the band and cut tracks.
Right.
So something like the drums, uh, a lot of the drums were done by Jeremy Colson, and we recorded those at Studio 666, Dave Grohl's place.
Yeah.
Great room. And then some of them, like Candle Power, I sent that out, Terry Bozzio, and he just did a fantastic job. And Apollo in Color and Sandman Cloud Mist, they were sent to Vinny Colaiuta, and he just returned spectacular stuff. And Brian, okay, so here's a good example. Little Pretty, he played on Little Pretty, and that song is a beast. It's very deceiving. It's not something that I felt I could just send to anybody and just say, hey, play a part on this. There was just too much. So he came to the studio, and
Nice.
I worked with him directly on that. But then some of the other tracks Philip did, and I sent them out. And then the one with Henrik, I sent that out to him in Europe, and then he just did his thing, and I got it back and was like, wow. It was like
Yeah.
that with everybody. Maybe there
And
was a few where I said, well, in this bar, can you do this? So I'd send it back, and yeah,
you mentioned Terry and Vinny. Your longtime fans will also, get to hear some Billy Sheehan on this record as well. And
yeah.
it's got to feel like a class reunion to you, getting to work with these guys again. I mean, you must have a shorthand.
Yeah, it's really nice, like, well, with Billy Sheehan, he recorded that bass track for Avalancha back during the Real Illusion days.
Okay.
I had that track on the shelf, I just had the bass and the drums, and it was one of those songs that was, calling to me. Um, and getting, having to work, having an opportunity to work in the atmosphere of Terry Bozzio and Vinnie Colaiuta was really nice because, yeah, we go back to the Zappa days,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
just fantastic musicians and guys. So it worked great.
All of your albums tend to sound unique. And I like the sound of Inviolate. And I'm curious if you would maybe embrace doing another album in the same fashion, where you maybe are not in the room together and you just sort of put your pieces together and assemble them. It seemed to work on this album.
Yeah, it did work, and there's elements of it that I really like. It simplifies things, and it also allows the music to be sprinkled with more uniqueness. Most bands, when people think of conventionally what a band is, it's almost like the unconditional acceptance of everybody's contribution. It's like I saw this little interview with Keith Richards recently, and he said, I can't even imagine walking into a room with a bunch of musicians and I have a guitar part and I start telling the drummer what to play and the bass player what to play. That's unconceivable to him.
Hmm.
Well, that's the way I work. I tell everybody virtually exactly what to play because for the most part, I'm a composer. I've started out before I was playing the guitar, I was writing little black dots,
Right.
and that's a just one way of doing it. You manifest a vision, but for something like a lot of the rock music stuff, I will just say, okay, here we are, and we're in 4/4, and here's what I'm playing. What do you got? And everybody kind of contributes. But if something isn't working to my ear, I'll jump in and make suggestions or make changes. That's one approach. Another approach is I hand a rock musician a piece of music and say, play this exactly the way it's written, because that's how I hear the entire piece.
Right.
And that's fine too. Whatever you want to do.
Right. Right. I was at a social event a few weeks ago, and I was trying to describe your sound to the person I was talking to, and I came up with really good, agile, and innovative. And then I'm like, well, that's every guitarist. So I've got you here. How would you describe your playing to somebody if they just said, "Oh, you play"? What do you sound like?
Well, melodious, quirky, um, uh, phrased. There's a lot of phrasing, a little obtuse at times, and abstract. I like to consider it emotional. It is for me. Um, I don't know. Does that help you at your next party?
I hope so. I'll spit some of those out and see if they go and check out your music.
Well, quirky abstract is probably some good
Right.
ways.
I think I went, well, he was that guy in David Lee Roth band, like, and it was like, oh, okay, he's good. um, Speaking of old nuggets, you just recently put out Flexible again, 36th anniversary, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
How did bringing Bernie Grunman in to do the mastering on it, how did that change those songs in your opinion?
Well, whenever you record something, your highest quality is the original way you captured it. And then of course you could manipulate it from there by adding all sorts of stuff. So when I recorded Flexible, it was all like on a quarter-inch 8-track analog machine. And
Right.
I didn't know what I was doing really. I was learning. So I captured it the best I can, and then through the years, back then when I released it on vinyl, because that's all there was, vinyl and cassette. That was probably closest quality to the original. But then as the digital revolution took place, that for the last 30 years or whatever, however long digital has been creeping up, the quality of it, the parameters of the way it captures things has changed dramatically. The converters they use, the bit rates, the sample rates, all these things change, which, if you all of a suddenly have a vinyl and then you make it into a CD back in 1983 or 4 or whenever CDs came out,
Yeah.
um, it was later than that actually, because when Flexible came out there was no CDs, and then when CDs came out, it was an inferior medium for the audio experience.
Right.
It had its nice points. You're not getting crackling. The noise floor of analog vanished.
Right.
But the way that it was converting the information was dramatic. It was harsh. It was aggressive in a way. So you lose the noise floor, and you get a clarity. But there was like it had little edges in it.
Right.
So then that started to change. And as it changed, many artists decided, okay, well, now I'm going to take my record and remaster it again with this new technology. And then again, and then again. So with me, I've been doing that with Flexible for like 36 years,
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
now. And Bernie Grumman, was doing it, was mastering vinyl because it's an art. The way you carve the lathes you use, how they're set up, the way it carves the wax, the way the stampers are made, and the ears that go into the mastering process, the EQing. And Bernie Grumman is just, he's been doing it. He's worked with everybody,
Yeah.
from when records started, you know, and he's like almost semi-retired, but since we've worked together for so long, he'll come out of that to, throw down some wax for me.
Right
And
on.
when I was listening to the CD of Flexible compared to the acetate that Bernie made of the newest version, which is the vinyl, I got to tell you, the whole feeling of it was different. Just the way it hits your ears and your soul and your heart. just psychologically, it's you're bathing in completely different waters. You know, the notes are the same.
Right.
The experience was very different.
Right. Are you still talking to your fellow Generation X men? Is there anything brewing there in the background?
All the time. It's a week doesn't go by where we're not communicating somehow. And matter of fact, I just finished up my guitar camp last weekend, and Nuno was one of the guests.
Cool.
So, you know, the thing about Generation X is we all really love it. We all really enjoy getting out there. It's almost like you've worked your whole life. Now it's time to have some real fun. You don't have to. We got great management for it. We got great techs. We got great venues. So it's kind of like a cakewalk. The challenge with it is in the scheduling, because everybody has a lot of things going on. Everybody has either solo work they're doing, or they have bands. Like Zach does his thing, and then he's with Ozzy, and Nuno's got Extreme, and then he does his thing, and so it's getting the schedules together that's the real
Yeah.
challenge. Even though we
Yeah.
all really want to do it.
I'm getting close to 30 minutes. Are you cool for another question, or do you have something else
Yeah,
looming?
you're my last interview today, so you can go as long as you like.
Well, I'm not going to keep you that long, but do you think that there's still a drive to be the hotshot virtuoso guitarist that you aspired to be when you were a teenager amongst this current climate of teenagers who are listening to a lot of programmed music and a lot of auto-tuned music?
Well, the drive has never really changed, and that drive is really the competition that you set for yourself. Because in reality, you're actually, when you think about it, you're only ever really competing with yourself. It may look like you're competing with others, but the person that's being affected the most is you.
Yeah,
That's undeniable. So I always, for some reason, seem to have had, and I think this is a trait that we all have when we find something that we love being creative with. There's an interest there that pulls you along, and it's satisfied for a little while when you accomplish a particular visualization or something. But then there's always that, what else you got there? What else can you do here? What's more? What's more? So that's fun, and we all do that, and it's vital. It's vital in the evolution of our creativity. We have to have that. The way that I've seen that in myself has changed through the years, and it's manifested itself at times with egoic competition with the other, you
right.
know, which later on I recognized, if somebody else is doing something that is inspiring you, you can use that as inspiration as opposed to seeing it as competition.
Right.
So that's a big jump, a huge jump for humanity
Yeah.
when you make that shift, because all of a sudden the competition becomes your friend. You become friendly with it because you're learning. Like if I was a coach of a football team, and that's where the word competition is appropriate, as opposed to playing an instrument, which I
Right.
don't, So, I mean, I might tell them, look, the only people you're really competing with here is yourself, to be better than you were last time, to find more ingenious ways of moving, to be more stealthy, to be clearer each time. And every time you play a game, you've got more ammunition to improve yourself. If you win the game, great. If we don't win the game, that's fine, because we'll have an opportunity to be inspired by that thing that did win the game. So that's a whole shift in human consciousness, because we're not really there.
Right.
But when you go there, you relieve yourself of a tremendous amount of suffering, because competition is a form of suffering, because it's nice when you win, but all along the way you're fighting. If I got to win, I got to get better. I got to get better because I have to beat them, And then you get there and you're fighting, 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 and then you can lose. So this is all suffering that's unnecessary. There can be an enthusiasm in it, and for many people there is. So for me, my mind has changed about it. I used to be a lot more, how do I fit in here? Where am I going? How do I stack up? Am I delivering? All these things, and it leaves you questioning yourself and not quite comfortable in your skin, and
Right.
that's suffering. And as time went on, and maybe this comes with age, you there can be a tendency to release that stuff, and the more that I released it, the more freedom and joy and creativity I discovered. So now, if I see some of these young guys, and there's many of them now, there's a whole. I've seen several generations of the evolution of the guitar, and right now, I mean, I see kids doing things that they're just fascinating. They're amazing. Their ability to navigate the neck, and it's unique. A lot of it's just unique. So when I see that, it would be very foolish of me to feel like I had to be better than that.
Right.
I didn't even know how you.
Right.
So, but it's really advantageous for me to look at these young kids and go, wow, that you know, there's elements of that I like to absorb. And you're gonna anyway. You're never gonna be the same after hearing any guitar player. It subtly affects you. So I embrace that, and that's a mental attitude, and that changes the quality of your whole life.
Right on. Well, here, I'll just pause this up now. I think we've got tons there.